Can I just interject and just say that you're right in turning to me and saying I didn't mean that you have to marry your first partner. But there's something very important about the emotional connection. And that's coming from maybe me being a therapist and knowing and seeing the pain that the young people who come to me are in when there's no emotional connection and they give their bodies over. By the way, young men too. I think it's shifting, actually. It's interesting what I'm seeing in my practice. Young men are more vulnerable than women now. Women have taken on the role that young men used to have emotionally. And so, women have all these choices, and now they're leaving young men in the dust, and the young men are feeling lonely, and they have sex with a girl and they want to date her, and she says, no, I'm sleeping with 5 guys at the same time. And these are kids in their 20s. But sex is better with emotional connection. That doesn't mean you have to marry the first guy that you have sex with. I also want to say that there is something called neurotic repetition. A lot of the early feminists had a lot of trauma. You had trauma. A lot of people have had trauma. And what happens with trauma is it tends to be like PTSD. If we have disconnection early on, or abuse, or violence against us, attachment disorders, as I've talked about in your other podcasts when you're very young, it gets reenacted and repeated throughout your life over and over and over and over again. So interestingly, the early feminists were mostly traumatized women. If you look at the histories of them, they had physically abusive fathers, alcoholic fathers. They had uncles who raped them. They had, terrible, even their mothers too. Just really abusive parents, but mostly the men in their life were horrible. And so a lot of this whole experience depends on where you come from and what you had. If you've had good models, it's why I sort of talk about, I'm writing a book about divorce. Why am I writing a book about divorce if I believe in relationships? Because divorce is going to happen and we need to help parents to know how to raise healthy children in spite of it. But relationships matter. They matter in the raising of children. So when we have a disconnected society where we say relationships don't matter, just sex matters. Sex, sex, sex. Of course sex matters. But what I say to young people is sex is a very small part of a relationship. It really is, because in the beginning it's hot, hot, hot. And then as you get to know each other and you have the daily comings and goings of life, it's the friendship, it's the connection, it's the companionship, it's the relationship. But if you've had a lot of trauma, then you are not going to turn towards relationships, and you are not going to turn towards men. If men traumatized you and you saw a man abuse your mother, of course you're not going to want men in your life. So a lot of it, I think the feminist movement does something which it's first of all, I'm going to say it's done a lot of good. I wouldn't be here. None of us would be here without it. Those women that took the risks, we have to be grateful toward. But what it also did is it distorted a lot of the importance of relationships and how important male and female relationships are. I'll stop there because I've talked too much, but